Our first speaker today is none other than Miss Vaishnavi Verma, who will be taking us through the essentials of constructing powerful arguments. Over to you, Vaishnavi, now.
Okay. Can you hear me? All?
Yes, yes, you
Yes, you are
are
audible.
very much audible.
All right, all right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the brief introduction. It really means a lot. And thank you so much to panelists and other organizers for inviting me for this thing. So without doing further delay, as you have been mentioning about a lot about debates and uh, all of it. So I'll just begin with a basic introduction. Fine. So we think
Pardon me,
that
Vaishnavi.
debates.
Excuse me, just for a second. I just need to clear one point. Um, Participants, whichever doubt you have, whatever doubt you have, please put them in the question and answer sections. We will be taking few doubts at the end of the session from there only. Sorry to disturb. Please continue.
It's all right. So I think to make this session more interactive, you can put up your things. That I'll be asking a few questions in the chat, or else if you can just raise your hand, I'll be grateful if you can just share your experiences as well. So majorly, that we see that there are lots of debates going on in news channels and all of them, and you're very fascinated and excited looking at them. But believe me when I say this, they are not debate. They are just political agendas being set, and they really do not know how to be debating in a very good manner. So, how many of you have watched that recent debate between the US to president for the elections, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump's debate? Yes, just raise your hands, whosoever has seen that. Many, and I was just scared that amazing. And looking at it, it was just like a dream for me. Like something like that happening in India. Oh my God, that's not happening. Even if there are people from political parties who are representing their own stances in our news channels and doing these such debates, they're not very. I would say they're not to that extent. Given the chances to speak, they interrupt each others in between, and it's okay, it's happening in debate. But until and unless there are no rules and there are no regulations and things not being followed, there is no format, nothing goes and nothing happens. So I'll tell you that there are three kind of debates that goes on around the world. So the one that you saw and the one you think, the parliament debate that you saw between those presidents, it happens between one person and the one person, and we call it CD. So if you go through with the circuits, right, there are debating circuits in Delhi, in different circuits. There is a national circuit for debate. There are international circuits for debate. So all of these people have three basic formats for which they go about debating. The first one is conventional debate, where there is one person and the other person. There's just one-on-one debate going on. You will be given a few minutes. You will be given a few minutes. Tackle each other's point and go forward with this. So this is a very common, very simple, and most understanding and without any much of rules and regulations kind of debate that goes on. That is conventional debate. So the debate that you saw between Donald Trump and your Kamala Harris was a kind of CD only. Means it was a conventional debate. Now as we all are actually living in India, and we all basically majorly in this area, we follow another format, and that is called Asian Parliamentary Debate. So Asian Parliamentary Debate, as you might be hearing that it sounds like parliamentary debate, the one we see in parliament kind of stuff. But again, we do not have such thing in parliament, but yes, the structure to some extent is same and similar. So without delaying, and I'll just today in the session we'll cover only Asian Parliamentary Debate, because this is what actually is majorly. So if you go and register yourself for any competition, until unless it's not Asian, it's something different from Asian Parliamentary Debate, they will not just mention, they'll just mention it a debate, and it will be an Asian Parliamentary Debate. Conventional debate and other one that exists is British Parliamentary Debate. So the British Parliamentary Debate and Asian Parliamentary Debate, these two are two major formats of debates that goes around the world when there are teams involved. And the structure to some extent is similar, but not similar as well at the same time. So I'll in the end let you know a little about the British parliamentary debate once I've completed everything about the Asian parliamentary debate. But first, it is very important for you to understand how the Asian parliamentary debate goes on, so that you are able to understand the other parts and other debates as well. So today's topic is just Asian parliamentary debate. So as you can see in the slide, so Asian parliamentary debate. Okay, let's go along with this motion introduction itself. All right, so there are two teams. I hope the admins can just manage PPT accordingly. I'm saying, okay, so I'm just mentioning from the very beginning how we go on. Okay, all right. So if we go along, there are three people on both the sides. There are two teams. One is the government side, and the one is the opposition side. Right. So in government side, as you can see, it's parliamentary too. We will have some basic terminologies that way only. So in government side, there is a prime minister, then comes the deputy prime minister, and then comes your whip. There is your government whip. And in the opposition side, there is a leader of opposition, there is a deputy leader of opposition, and then comes your opposition whip. All these three speakers from both the sides have their specified roles in the debate as to what they will be speaking, what part they have to speak, and all these three people have to coordinate between each other to make sure that the case that they're representing is going in a very particular direction and is tackling all the doubts away of the other opponents, and also shattling all the things and points that are being mentioned by others as well. Just give me a second. All right. Fine. So next, all right. So three people from both the sides, and then comes your adjudicators, the people who are judging the debate. So basically, what is expected, what is ideal in ideal scenarios, there are three adjudicators. One is the chair, and the other are two co-panelists with the adjudicator. So depending upon how the seniority of those adjudicators, they manage it all, and it's not so much. I would say it's not so much unified, but if you go in some big tournaments, some international tournaments, some national tournaments that happen, there this debate is not just between these debaters. The government. Just give me a second, fine. Sai or Rupkatha, you can take off for a minute, fine.
Yeah, sure. So basically, now, as Vaishnavi has already introduced, these key people are a part of this structure of debate. And well, the format of the debate is pretty dynamic. There are fast exchanges. There is a competitive nature. And see, this kind of debate is something in which there is a particular order which is followed, as Vaishnavi has already mentioned. And now we will discuss about the strategies for effective argumentation, like how do we build an argument. So basically, first you start building an argument with a foundation, right? You first base your argument upon something concrete, something which is universally known. Then you structure it in such a way, you use logical points. You use points, you use data points, you use supporting evidence, and you use some logical transitions. See, arguments are kind of like a story. They have to flow. They have to flow in a particular way, and they have to flow such that the person who is listening to the argument is mesmerized and he's convinced about what you're saying. Also, one more thing which you can do while presenting your argument is engage with the opponents. For example, if you're making an argument, you can simply say, as my opponent mentioned about this thing, I feel that this is not the case. Why, I don't understand why you said this, but I think that this should be the case, and this is why you said this wrong. You can also respond to their counter arguments in your own opening statements, and basically it has to be interactive. It does not have to be a monologue, right? It has to be interactive. You have to answer your opponent's question. You have to present questions about your opponent's arguments also. Now, Vaishnavi, are you available now? We can continue
Yeah,
with the
yes,
form.
yes, yes, yes. Can you just let me know which point I was mentioning? Yes, about the adjudicators, right? So in big tournaments, there is a government side, there is an opposition side, and there is a competition that also goes on between the adjudicators. So the way you are competing to win a debate, and similar way, these adjudicators are also competing between each other to win the adjudication, because adjudication, that means judging who is winning the debate, is also a very tough job, and is also very, I must say, it's a very complex thing as well, because both the cases you have been hearing, and so I'll tell you how this competition between adjudicators goes on. So let's say three panels of the people who have heard both the sides, of the government side and the opposition side. When these three people then after you are so in APD there are 7 minutes and 20 seconds that have been given to you. Note it down. Note it down. 7 minutes and 20 seconds given to each speaker. Uh, okay. Is there a question, Samar? Okay. So 7 minutes and 20 seconds are given to each and every single speaker in a debate format of APD. So that means there are three people from the government side, three people from the opposition side, and three people on the adjudication side. So there are seven. If you just do your calculations, you're all from IIT. So fine. Next is once the prime minister comes, so prime minister is the first speaker. He'll come and present the whole. So I'll tell you the speaker rows just one by one and in this format only, okay? Because we do these sessions and considering the time limit and everything, these speaker rows take up the whole session. But I'll just brief in very simple format and very quickly for you all. So first speaker in an APD is the prime minister. He comes. The basic things that he should have in a 7 minutes and 20 seconds speech is redefining the motion. But again I need to tell you that how the motion is being chosen as well. So before so how the motion is being chosen is that the three adjudicators are there. These will give you three motions, right? Three different topics, fine. And then they will tell you to rank all these motions according to your preferences. Both the sides have one thing, that they can veto one motion. For example, I have I have chalo, there is a motion like climate change is not making an impact, is not an issue. Fine. And I have to say in support of this motion because I have been given this government side, and the other person who has been given this opposition side has to speak opposing this motion. So in this motion, particularly, everybody know and all the consequences and all the evidences are actually that climate change is making an impact, right? And that's why the person who needs to support this motion that climate change is not making an impact will veto this motion if he has other choices, other better choices to support, right? So that's how, from these three motions that have been given to you by the adjudicators, both the sides will veto one motion and they will give preferences to the other two motions. So, for example, there have been three motions given to you, government side as me, and one of the motion is climate change. I will veto this motion, right? But for the opposition side will not veto this motion, but they will give this motion what? Preference one, because they want this motion to be debated. But they also know that they are, but that's like instinct. If they don't just act in a very rational manner, then it's possible that they don't, the government side do not veto this climate motion, and the opposition side gives it the first preference, and that motion is passed and that is now being debated. So basically you see that two motions from the three are already vetoed, right? Then there is just one motion that is already there and that will be debated, fine. Now comes complexities, and complexities comes in the way when the people who when the motions that both the sides have vetoed are same, right? When the motions are which are vetoed by both the sides, for example, climate change is vetoed by government side as well, and the climate change is vetoed by the opposition side as well. Now the government side has given two motions, two preferences for a motion and two other preferences, right? So now, depending upon if, for example, both of them have same first preference, then that motion will be taken up. So it's like when you will be doing and you will be doing a debate and a motion and do a mock in debate, you will be clearing these things very finely. But like understanding this one thing, that this motion that is being chosen and finally debated is also voted and preferred, and then you actually come up to debate a kind of motion. Fine. Now there is a motion that has been finalized. Also telling you that how it goes. So there is this adjudicator. I'll not come and tell you my preferences in front of a meeting or in front like hello adjudicator. I'll give my preferences 3, 2, 1. So the motion one is my third preference, motion two is my fourth preference, and all that way. That does not happen this way. Either if you're in an offline mode, you write a check to adjudicators so that it's going silently. because you don't want to tell the other side which motion you are waiting and which motion you want to go for, right? If the other thing is, if the other side think that they're going to just take up this motion, then we'll go to this motion. Why? Because we don't want them to win, right? So these are the things, that these are some of the tricks that you play while choosing your motion. Now the motion is decided. Am I making sense first?
Obviously, you are.
All right. All right, take care. So yeah, there is a question, quick question, very quickly, Bharat. Okay, we'll take the questions in the end because you have a lot to cover, as you see. So the motion is decided now. Now the debate follows. So now the prime minister will come, and now the prime minister's speech. What should it comprise of? In debate, it's like flexibility on your hands, and the prime minister and the LO, the leader of opposition, have this thing in their hands that they can just change the motion. You know what, change the motion, not changing that way, they can define the motion in which they want it to be the best case, right? For example, if this motion was passed that the climate change is not making an impact, and I'm from the government side and I need to go and speak on this topic, favoring this, that climate change is not affecting the world at all, I will go and define this motion. So Prime Minister will go and define this motion. You need to tell that what exactly you're referring to and what exactly you're supporting. Similarly, the leader of opposition will come and also tell, because anyway, like in any debate or any speech you go and give, what you do is just refine the agenda that you're talking about, right? You tell them that what exactly it is, what it means, so that the audience is understanding, right? And that's how, if I am giving this motion that climate change is making no impact, I will go as a prime minister, and what I will do is that, hi everybody. I'll not say hi everybody. So people basically, if you see a debate, they'll start like, hi. I will start with a self countdown of 3, 2, 1, because they have their countdown going on, 7 minutes and 20 seconds. So they say, I am Vaishnavi Verma. You need to introduce yourself. I'm Vaishnavi Verma, and nowadays, as there is this new community coming up, the LGBTQ, you also need to define your what do we say, pronouns. This is very important in debate, especially if you're in Delhi. You have to tell your pronouns, right? Otherwise, if and you can also file equity against the people who are referring you. For example, your preferred pronouns being a boy, you're a boy, but your preferred pronouns is him or they, right? Not him or her. So you can sue those people for referring to that, when some people actually felt so offended. So you have to define your pronouns. So I'll say, I'm Vaishnav Verma. My preferred pronouns is she and her, and I'll begin my speech with a self countdown of 3, 2, 1, and here it goes. Then they'll start the timer. So once the timer is started, all right, then I'm defining the motion as the prime minister, and the motion is, the climate change is not making an impact, so we should focus on economic development. I'll go and say, hi, this whole motion is set in the agenda, is set in a time period in the 17th century. Right. Now I have set this motion in the 17th century. I am going to focus on economic development. It does not matter to me. I have changed the whole contemporary thing of this motion. I will support this motion at all. At all my consequences, thinking that this motion is actually set in 17th century. Right. So this way you will be able to protect yourself in the debate. And adjudicator will say, yes, this will be followed, because the motion is not set in the current agenda by the side of the government. Now, now if I've set the motion in 17th century, fine. I have saved myself. But if, let's say, I was going from the leader of opposition, I was the leader of opposition, I'll go and tell, what is this? They have set the motion in the 17th century, and to some extent he's the prime minister. You have to take this thing in that way, but you have to play both the sides now. For example, firstly, you will criticize the government for setting the whole motion for the 17th century and telling that this motion was meant somewhere, and you will debate for the fact that somewhere or the other you will be given some defining things with the motion as well. You can ask the adjudicator to clarify it yourself. They will question. And if you're from leader of opposition or you're from the opposition side, you have to question that how the hell are they setting the motion in the 17th century when there is something else also mentioned in the motion. Let's say they also give you context, right? So it's not just like they'll give you a whole line. It happens most of the time, but most of the time also when you're given a line, you're also given a context, a big context. They'll give you a whole story. So, like for example, the motions range from variety of things. So you will be given a motion saying that in a movie, let's say Bunty and Bubbly was a movie, right? And in Bunty and Bubbly did the right thing, and they'll give you the context of the whole a bit of story that this is instance we're debating. So debate goes like anything. Your motions may range from parliament, global politics, geopolitics, to environment, to feminism, to entertainment, everything. Fine. So you'll be given a context. So the opposition side can come up and try to reformulate this context. But now, as the opposition side have defined that they will be going forward with this thing, with this motion in the 17th century, you will have to mention, okay, yes, okay, you're setting this motion in the 17th century. Then now it becomes more important for us to save the environment. Then you will tell them that this is going to be the situation. You already know the situation since you are in 21st century now. You will be saying that as a predictor, you will project yourself that as a predictor, thing is that the earth is rolling and there is a lot of dust around it, and if it goes on, then there will be a situation when the earth is going to drain and we'll all die. So you start debating that thing from over there, and you say, if we do not save the environment today, we will not be able to see the earth in the 21st century itself. So I now, and I hope that you might have got a sense of how to define motions to protect your own sides. Why? Because in tournaments, you don't get to choose your sides. You will be given a coin or something. They will just use a random method to just give you government, to just give you opposition. It is not in your hand. You will be asked to support any motion. You will be asked to oppose any motion. And the person who can do that, he is the right debater. He is the best debater. All right. So I hope motion definition is the main part of the prime minister and L. Now, you three people from both the sides have to come up at a point where you're deciding which part will be speaking, which point will be speaking or spoken by both by all three of us. So whip is very easy, but whip is very crucial as well. I'll tell you about whip, because so the whip, what is the main work of the government whip and what is the main work of the opposition whip is to nothing but to work as a biased adjudicator. That means I am the whip. My prime minister has spoken. My deputy prime minister has spoken. Now I'll come forward and tell the adjudicator that, see, my prime minister said this. My deputy prime minister said this. They presented all of these things. You will have to some extent summarize whatever arguments were made by your side in that sense, right? And you tell the adjudicator that they did this and they did this, and they did not mention, they did not tackle this point. This question still stands, and that's the reason why our side wins, not theirs, right? So that's the major work of a whip, right? The whip needs to create a kind of metrics where he's telling that our government side said this, our opposition side said this, but according to their side, like if it's a government whip, then he will say that these points still stays valid. They didn't deal with these questions, and these are still the questions that are there, and hence they were not able to just clarify our doubts and our concerns, and that's why we win, not them. And this work is to be done by both the opposition whip and the government whip, and then the adjudicators will themselves think about it. Now there is one main point when I'm telling you about the whip is, whip can never come up and introduce a new point in the debate. That means I can only summarize whatever has been said by the prime minister and my deputy prime minister. I can only summarize what has been already said and what all points being mentioned by the leader of opposition and the deputy leader of opposition if I'm an opposition whip. But I cannot put a new point. If I put a new point, it will not be noted by the adjudicator. It's just a waste of time. You are just wasting your 7 minutes and 20 seconds. Because most of the debates, what happens in most of the debates is that prime minister has spoken, deputy prime minister has spoken, but now something was said by the opposition and the whip has got some other, because he's the third speaker, right? Now whip has got some other good question, some other good point that he need to add, but he cannot add that point. Now because those points have to come in first two speeches, prime minister and deputy prime minister, leader of opposition and deputy leader of opposition. And now I'll tell you what the role of these two speakers are. So prime minister will come up and have to define the motion, right? Write these points, right? Have to define the motion, the agenda that has been chosen, define it in your own sense. In 17th century, you want it in what? Okay, my laptop is going to switch off. Just a second.
Vaishnavi, you are muted.
Hi, I'm asking where we were. I'm so sorry. What I was saying last time, what I was mentioning last time. I was mentioning about the speaker's role, the prime minister and
The
the
role of
deputy prime
Speaker,
minister.
Prime Minister, and the Deputy Prime Minister. You were explaining
All
that.
right, all right, all right. So the prime minister need to set the agenda. So you will be specifying the agenda, right? This is what we mean by this agenda. Second thing that you need to define is the stakeholders, the group of stakeholders. That is also you can deviate, right? For example, this climate change is an agenda, and for example, I'm not setting this thing in 17th century, let's say, and I've been given climate change is not making impact. Why should I care about it? This is my agenda. So I will say, I don't care about young people. I don't care about kids because my stakeholders for whom I'm debating are old people, right? They will die until and unless they will face the consequences of climate change. So I'm not going to debate about them. My stakeholders are only old people. So this is where you also define your stakeholders, right? That who all are getting impacted in your agenda, who all are the main people for whom you're concerned and for whom you're speaking. And it is better that you widen your stakeholders and or just reduce your stakeholders size depending upon what the motion and how it is going. So these two things are to be clarified and they have to be there in the prime minister's speech, all for sure. Fine. Now, okay, so the thing I mentioned in the beginning that you're setting your agenda in the 17th century or the 21st century is another term that comes in debating circuit, and that is called as status quo. Write it, STATUSQUO, status quo. Status quo is the thing that tells that you are, what is the status quo? Like status quo is a 17th century, not today's. Fine. So this is status quo is this time period or the society in where you are setting your agenda and where from which you are actually talking about. Fine. So status quo you need to define. You need to define your stakeholders in the in the very first speech and agenda. These three things have to be defined by the prime minister. Apart from this, rest comes your major points, right? So prime minister can do what one thing he can come up. Let's say there are 5 points that the government side need to take up, right? 5 points are there from the government side, 5 points are there from the like depending upon the government side or the opposition side, depending upon. So there are 5 points that you need to present, that these two people need to present and the third person will summarize. Fine. So it is possible that the prime minister just introduce these 5 points and say that my deputy prime minister will throw more light in this on these 5 points, right? He can do that. Otherwise, that is also possible that the prime minister do not introduce all the 5 points but just tells you the just speak the major point, the one which is very much important, right? He will just explain the first point, major point, and then he will say that the rest of the points will be followed by the deputy prime minister. Now, major role of deputy prime minister is what? To complete all the points that were set in the debate by three people. Fine. So the deputy prime minister will come and extend whatever has been said by the prime minister as well. So prime minister was having a lot of time and having a lot of hustle in defining the motion, status quo, stakeholders, and everything. So he might have lost his 4 to 5 minutes or 3 to 4 minutes at least, right? So the deputy prime minister's main roles is also main in the sense that he will come up and define and tell you all the points. Now there is another thing that comes up, like whip cannot add a point, but you see that there is something very exciting that we need to say because they said something and now we need to counter it. Some way or the other you need to counter it, some way or the other you want to add your point, right? But your prime minister's speech is over, your deputy prime minister's speech is over, now you're only left. So prime minister and deputy prime minister are pushing you to just inculcate this thing in a way that it is accepted by the adjudicators, that it is not a new point. What this whip can do in that sense is that whatever point has been mentioned by the Prime Minister and Deputy Prime Minister, just put that point forward that this was said and explain it further and connect it with whatever argument you want to make forward with some example. So examples by whips are always acceptable. Means say you are defining, you're saying that you're giving the example that climate change is not making an impact. You know why? Because I'm living and I can breathe air. I can have good water. It is available to me, and I mean I'm giving very vague examples. Give good examples, but a whip can always make his point stand and get notified by the adjudicators by the means of examples. So whatever point you want to bring forward, don't just keep it a kind of a point, but give example without mention that it's a new point. But you can refer to the previous points that were mentioned. So this way your speech will be making an impact to give this debate to your side. Fine. These are the three speaker rules, and the way it is for government, similar way it is for opposition. Fine. So the speaker rules are done. The introduction is done. Now, the other thing that comes up. Can we go back to this the first slide or something? Yeah. So opening speeches. I told you opening speeches from all the people. As I mentioned about the Prime Minister and everything. Motion introduction. I told you. Now, there comes point of information. There is very interesting thing that happens in debate is that POI. They call it POI, point of information, and that is okay. So this POIs, I have 7 minutes and 20 seconds. I'm making points after points, points after points, points after points, right? But there is no conversation going on in the debate. So this, to some extent, the adjudicators sometimes may tell you that there was no conversation happening. There was no good tackling points, and I didn't feel it very nice. So once okay, so when you're coming and saying things that hi everyone, I'm Vaishnavi, my preferred pronouns are she and her, and you also mention them one more thing before you start your speeches, and that is your I'm not remembering the exact terminology, but it's something, right? My preferred POI timing is from this to this second. That means I am telling them that I will start my speech from 7 minutes, for 7 minutes and 20 seconds. One minute are protected times. That means first 60 seconds and last 60 seconds. I will not be asked a question, and I will not be asked a question. That means that the person who are in the debating are also not expected to ask a question. This is their protected time, because in 1 minute they will set the agenda, and in the last minute they will conclude whatever they have said. So in first 60 seconds and last 60 seconds you cannot ask a question. If you raise your hand for asking a POI, the adjudicator will shut you up and say this is their protective minutes, you can't ask a question. So that's one thing which is a rule, right? But now in the middle, when I'm coming up and telling people that my preferred pronouns and this and that, it is expected that you tell them your expected question timing as well. For example, I prefer questions after my 5th minute. So I'll say I'll prefer questions. I'll prefer my preferable POI timings are after the fifth minute of my speech, right? So what happens? You should mention it. I will say why, because what happens is you have 7 minutes and 20 seconds and 62 minutes are protected time in the between when you are actually framing and telling your points, because the adjudicators note down your points, right? But opposition side don't want you to make your points. They want you to just leave it all. They just want to come and ask you some silly questions so that you just deal with them, and you don't present your whole case. They want to waste your time. Everybody want to waste your time in that sense. So this way you can just tell them that I'll take POI after 5th minute of my speech. So 5 minutes ke liye, for the first 5 minutes I will present my whole case. Once I'm done, after my 5th to 6th minute, right, you can ask me questions. In this 1 minute you can ask me question, right? You can raise your hand, I will take up the question. You cannot hackle in between. You can just don't say that, don't hackle in between. That adjudicator is there for. But you just tell and mention it in initially only that my preferred POI timing is just 5 minutes, it's the 5th minute of my speech, So ask questions in that 5th minute only. Do not raise your hand or do not hack in between. Do not write any comment because most of the debating tournaments also go on this Zoom and thing also. So they also just do a lot of comp POI, POI, POI. It actually, takes away the person's focus from whatever he was saying, right? This is what POI is. So as I told you, POI, asking POI and answering POI and taking POI is all goes in your favor. For example, there is a question that is posted on you. If it is a good question, your time will be given a point for it. And if you're answering that question in a very nice way, you will get extra points for it. So not all the time if POIs are your waste of time, but it's a waste of time in the sense that they won't allow you to complete your own points. And then your whip cannot make new points, and then some of the points will be there that will be left forever, and you wouldn't have been able to present it, and you might lose the debate. So I hope that makes sense. But taking POIs, at least take 2 POIs in the debate and ask POIs. Always, just if you're from the opposition or if you're from the government and your opponent is speaking, always raise your hand in at the time when he has told you that this is my preferred point, point of information timing. And if, for example, the person has not mentioned any preferred point of information timing, you just raise your hand the whole debating thing. Just lower it in the first minute and the last minute of the debate, because you yourself you won't be allowed to take up the question. Is my voice not clear, Kya? I'm hearing
It's
some.
clear. It's clear.
No, it is
Okay, so
very clear. You can go on, Vaishnavi.
Okay. I think I've taken a lot of things and it's almost over. POIs is done. Now, closing speeches. I'll just tell you one more thing in the end. And also tell you about the adjudicators' criteria of judgment, because most of you might go as adjudicators, some of you might not like going as debaters. You can go as an adjudicator as well. So sometimes, not all the times, sometimes when there is a huge amount of time available with the people for doing these debates, it is expected that you give a reply speeches as well. Right. So your PM, both all three speakers are done once. Now both the sides will be given 1 minute, no, 4 minutes. Sorry, 4 minutes for reply speeches. 4 minutes for reply speeches. 4 minutes for government. 4 minutes for opposition. So these reply speeches cannot be given by whips. Why? Because whips have already spoken in the end, right? And now whip cannot again just go. So these reply speeches either have to be given by the prime minister or leader of opposition, or by the deputy prime minister or deputy leader of opposition. So depending upon who will go and who have points, they will just go and give reply speeches. And in reply speeches, what you are actually supposed to do, for example, something was mentioned by the whip in the end and something was mentioned by the prime minister in the beginning, but you couldn't just tackle that thing recently, and some of these things have been left. You give them a reply speeches that you said this, but we already did this. Then you said this, but we have already made these changes available, and this is what our status quo looks like. So these are the reply speeches that you give. Now the last thing that I will tell you about the adjudicators. So now how come the adjudicators are being judged, right? So there were 3 people in the meeting as adjudicators. What will happen is now the reply speeches are also done. Everything is done. Now 3 people will go and discuss it among themselves. However, how much time they want to take up. They also take 7 minutes and 5 to 10 minutes for preparation. I forgot to tell you. So, for example, I told you, right, that there will be 3 motions given to you. You will be choosing one depending upon the preferences. Then one will be finalized and one will be chosen to be debated. You will be given 30 minutes after that. 30 minutes or 20 minutes? No, 20 minutes after that, right? In APD, depending upon where you are debating, but in Delhi circuit, right? You'll be given 20 minutes after your chosen motion to think about it. And ideally, I'm mentioning, ideally, you're not supposed and you're not allowed to use internet in those 30 minutes. You're supposed to take up arguments, build your arguments, discuss amongst yourself, and just go. But I said ideally, and nothing in the world is ideal nowadays. How can you restrict someone using their internet, right? So people do research, people take the use of help of chat GPT and everything, and everybody has access to it. So if you're just relying on it, you're not actually going to win it. But you can take an idea from chat GPT and build your own arguments and go forward and take some other researches as well. But it is expected that in 20 minutes you won't be able to go and look forward with a lot of statistics, with a lot of things. And these things do not matter in debating. They matter a lot in model United Nations, absolutely they do, but in debating, no. You just need to make sure that whatever you are saying is making sense to the other person and is actually genuine and rational, right? You are defining your thing in a very rational format. You are not required to use statistics, figures, and saying that this was the part happened, because they also understand and you also know that you can't literally go forward with the whole research in just 20 minutes of your preparation time. In those 20 minutes, you just decide that I will speak this point, you speak this point, this is how we will present this point. Okay. All right. So similarly, you were given 20 minutes to prepare your agendas, to prepare on your speeches. Similarly, those adjudicators will also take some time after hearing both the sides, saying, we'll come back in 10 minutes, maybe discussing which side takes the debate. So they will discuss it amongst themselves, and there's a competition. The first chair, which is there, is also, competing amongst all the three, but his decision will be binding, right? But in case the other two have the same same result, for example, for the other two, the government takes the debate, but for the chair, the opposition takes the debate. Only that case, the government will take it. Otherwise, the chair's decision is binding. Fine. But the competition is going on among adjudicators, and how they are supposed to go forward is that they will take 10 to 5 minutes, and they'll come back, and they'll come one by one. For example, the first chairperson is coming and giving his OA. They call it OA. I'm also not having the full form of OA, but A means adjudication, and I think over adjudication, maybe it's the full form of OA. So they'll give you OA. So the first person in the adjudicators panel will come, and while he's giving his OA, means his result, other two will not be there, right? Because if other two are there, then that person might take up some points and might get influenced, like, yeah, my decision is wrong, the person is mentioning right, I should give the debate to the government side, not the opposition side. That way they also have 7 minutes and 20 seconds to tell you that I get this. I'm an adjudicator now, right? And I heard both the government side and the opposition side. I am coming and giving my speech that I heard both of you. Government side gave me these points, opposition side gave me these points, and I give this debate to the government side because this was said by them, but they didn't tackle this. This was said by them, but this is how they explained me that this is how it is. So you need to make sure that as an adjudicator, you are satisfying the other parties also involved in the debate, that whatever was mentioned by you, I take them into account, but you didn't mention this, and that's the reason why you lose the debate, and that's the reason why the other side takes the debate. So once you have heard all three adjudicators sometimes it becomes so irritating, because if, let's say, you did a very bad debate and you're losing, right, and all three adjudicators are coming and telling you your mistake, that you didn't say this, you didn't say this, you didn't say this, so it's very bad, and you feel like, oh my god, but you learn a lot. Like, they will tell you that if these three people are mentioning the same thing, then make sure that you are wrong somewhere, not the other. Three people cannot be wrong together. And then after this, they have given you their OAs as well. Now you have to judge them as well. So what happens is that your judgments are in their hands, but their judgments are in your hands. They will give you speaker scores. So for example, 100 score may say, from the 100 score, the prime minister has been given 70 by the adjudicators. Others have been given, let's say, 80, depending upon speaker scores, right? So your aggregate speaker score will decide if you're winning as a debate, the whole debate. Because in a debating tournament, there's not just one debate that happens. There are 5 rounds of debate that happen, and these 5 rounds, you will have 5 different motions. One ranging on climate is very new field. People don't take that very seriously. All right, I'm having that in my mind, so I'm just saying this again and again. Second might be on entertainment. You might be debating on a movie that Aditi and who was that bunny married, why they married, and what happened between them. Something that way, they're very interesting. But if you have not seen the movie, that's very boring. Third is feminine, geopolitics, political, and you might also debate that dog is a cat and cat is not a dog. Yes. And when I say this happens. So ranging upon types of motions, you will be waiting 4 to 5, and then your speaker scores will be aggregated, and then depending upon how much which team has the aggregate will win in the end. That's a different thing. Now, how you judge the adjudicator is that once they have given you your speaker scores, you will also give them the ratings, right? Ratings in the sense, yes, I was satisfied with this person's adjudication, I'll give him a rating from 10 to 5. मैंने 5 rating दिया इस इंसान को. Okay, I've given 5 rating to this person, but I found that this person did not give the debate to me, but he very well established the fact that why I did lose this debate. So now I'll work for onward on what parts I was lacking behind. So you'll give a good marks to that person. You're expected to give them good marks irrespective of the fact that they have given you the debate and they have not given you the debate. But this is also one thing that, of course, the people whom you have given the debate as an adjudicator, for example, I gave the debate to the side of the government, right? Then I will get the marks from the side of government and I'll lose all the marks from the side of opposition. But other two people who give the debate to the opposition will gain the marks from the opposition people, but will not get that many marks from the side of government. So this adjudication is also a kind of competition, and then the ones who have a lot of who were able to satisfy their OAs to most of the people win as adjudicators. Thank you.
Well, Vaishnavi, that was a very great introduction about no introduction. It was very
Sorry,
comprehensive about the whole format.
sorry. It took 55 minutes. I'm so sorry.
No issues. It was actually very comprehensive, and even I didn't know this much about the APD format. So thank you for letting me know about it. Now we'll move on to the rest of the features of any debate, which can be used in any debates. So, like I already elaborated about the part about effective argumentation. So I've already elaborated upon it. I'll just reiterate. So basically, building a strong backbone, a strong foundation of your argument, then forming arguments on top of that. Like I said previously, you have to make it like a story which should be mesmerizing to the person who is listening. It should be articulate, it should be cohesive. Engaging with the opponent, I already elaborated on this, that you have to counter your opponent's questions, you have to raise doubts on his arguments, counter and answer his questions, and these you basically have to be interactive. You do not have to give a monologue. And emphasizing the impact. You know, one trick that I always use when I'm in debates is at the end of my argument, I usually basically think like if 10 to 15 years ahead in the future, what will be the impact of this? And that is very important. For example, in debates where government policy is being discussed, what I do is basically think about our children. What impact will this policy have on our children? Think about it for a minute. And I frame it in such a way that when people think about the impact of the policy 10, 15 years ahead, basically it proves my argument that the impact of this policy will be bad or good or whichever side I want to support. So thinking about the future and emphasizing upon the impact that the particular policy or the topic will create is a very good point, which is used to conclude your argument. Now, I would like to talk about research and preparation. Like basically on debates on any kind of topic, you need to research and you need to prepare. The first part of research is gathering information. Like how do we gather information? Where do we gather it from? Now, contrary to popular belief, Wikipedia is not a good source of information. Although you can basically there are two types of sources: primary sources and secondary sources. Primary sources are the sources which actually which are the where you can actually get evidence with the first hand evidence, the first hand resources. These constitute statements of leaders in United Nations assemblies, answers provided by MPs in the parliaments, RTIs, government data, and reports published by reputed organizations and news outlets, scholarly research articles. These primary things which are basically which are collected and which are made in a primary way, those have the real data. So those are called the primary resources. Wikipedia, well, it compiles this data, it aggregates these data and makes it in and presents it in a presentable manner. So these Wikipedia you can consult to get to these primary resources, but Wikipedia, you should not trust whatever is written on the Wikipedia, but you should rather go to the resources which are tagged or mentioned in the Wikipedia and then go to those primary resources and get your data from there. So my first advice to you would be, whenever you're researching for debate, consult primary resources, not the secondary ones. Primary resources like the official data, official statements, reputed organizations, data and research, and reports. Now, the second part is developing a strategy. Now, Like, for example, all of you must have played video games, right? So you have a certain arsenal of weapons and equipments which we use to actually defeat the enemy in the games. Similar to that, in debates, you need to have an arsenal of tools and tactics. What tools and tactics, you might ask? Basically, you need to anticipate the attacks of your opponent, what they might question. For example, you make an argument, you have to think what question the opponent might pose on you, and how can you mitigate that question? How can you answer that? What should the answers be? So you have to collect the data points and resources to tackle the question which you think the opponent might ask. This is one tactic. Another set of tools which you can use, very important set of tools, by the way, is are logical fallacies. Now, logical fallacies are basically errors in reasoning, which might seem correct at first glance, but they are actually logically incorrect. You need to know about all such fallacies which exist. And whenever your opponent makes any kind of fallacies like that, you need to point it out. It will demolish the whole argument of your opponent, which is based on these fallacies. Now, there are many fallacies like ad hominem, strawman's fallacy, red herring fallacy, hasty generalization. Now, strawman's fallacy is basically when a person is, rather than attacking the argument of your opponent, you're attacking the opponent themselves. This usually happens in, the debates which you see in the news channels, in which basically, when one politician says that your party did this, your government is doing this thing, and this, they have made a bad policy, and you should revise this and such. The politician, instead of answering that question, targets the person directly and says, okay, but you have two corruption cases on you. How can you ask the question? So these things fall under strawman's fallacy. Now, red herring fallacy. This is also an interesting form of fallacy. Red herring fallacy is basically when you shift the focus from the debate to another topic by introducing a point which is completely irrelevant to the topic. For example, if a politician from the opposition is questioning the government, like, this thing, this farmer's policy or this policy is wrong, then instead of replying to that question, the government says, but in your time, while your government was there, you made such and such policies. This is not an answer to the question. Those policies aren't relevant to this debate. But still, this is basically shifting the focus from the question, from the debate, from the topic to another point. This is red herring fallacy. Now, ad hominem fallacy, it's basically, the personal attack. That one was the ad hominem. I'm sorry. Strawman's fallacy is basically the fallacy in which you exaggerate whatever argument your opponent has presented. I'm really sorry for this mistake. Ad hominem is the fallacy in which you attack the opponent personally instead of attacking his argument. Strawman's fallacy is the fallacy in which you basically exaggerate the argument so much that you basically induce fear in the minds of the audience that, if this happens, all these things can happen. For example, some person might argue that, we should let immigrants into our country. For example, some politicians might argue that. Then to counter that, some people might use strawman's fallacy and say, oh, so you want to, flood our country with immigrants, replace our population with immigrants, and make sure that our next prime minister is one of the immigrants. This is a strawman's argument because basically one policy which the person suggested, you are stretching it so much, you are exaggerating it so much that it is no longer relevant. Should not exaggerate that much because that is not logical. That is not what the person is trying to say. So that is one of the logical. These fallacies, you have to read about them. You have to research about them. And you have to make sure that whenever your opponent uses these fallacies, you have to point them out. And you have to make sure that their whole argument, which is based on these fallacies, it gets demolished if you point out these fallacies. The third part is practicing and rehearsing. Now, practice is something which is like most essential part of any session. Like even before this session, me, Vaishnavi, other panel members, all of us have spoken on many occasions. We have hosted many debates, many other sessions, but still, all of us have prepared at least something about this topic, read the PPT, went through the material, and now we are speaking. Now we can speak with confidence. Now we know what we have to speak. So even if you are you're a beginner or you are a veteran in the field, you always have to practice. You always have to rehearse. There is no alternative to that. Now, educating and score criteria. Now, how does, the judges present in the APD who are judging you, how will they actually score you? So basically, they score on 4 criteria. One is the content, the quality of your argument. What what data points you're presenting, what kind of data points you're presenting, are they relevant to the topic, and what is your argument, what is the evidence, what is the analysis, what all have you reasoned about it. Basically, the content of your argument. That is something which depends on how much you have researched. That is the content part. Second is the style. Basically, no matter how good your content is, if you cannot present it in an articulate manner, in a cohesive manner, so that your words, your ideas are connected with each other. For example, if I start an argument or if I start a particular point, I jump onto another point instantly, and then I jump onto another third idea. That will confuse the people, that will confuse the judges, and that will not put my point through. It will not put my point across the table. So you have to be coherent. You have to make sure that your one idea connects with your another idea, your next idea, and that connects with the final idea. You have to make it in a connected manner. You have to weave a story. You have to weave an argument. So your style of delivery, it should be good. You have to use language immediately, effectively for that, because you have to deliver your argument in an effective manner, in a persuasive manner. The target of debate is, contrary to popular belief, not to fight your opponent, but to make him believe that what you are trying to say is correct. So you have to persuade him that basically what your argument is, it is the correct one. What your stance on the topic is, it is the correct one. So I talked about content, I talked about the style. Now, strategy. As I previously said, you have to create a strategy. You need to have tools in your arsenal. You need to make sure that you point out the logical fallacies. You need to make sure that you have sufficient data points to counter their question. And you need to make sure that you and your team members are posed in such a way that you work together, you do not contradict each other, and you can strategize on which points which person will attack upon, which person will highlight. That is what constitutes the strategy, the internal team strategy. And teamwork, obviously, you have to make sure that your arguments complement each other's arguments. As I said just now, you cannot contradict each other. You have to achieve you have to prove a common point. So these are the 4 criteria on which the judges score you. Now, what basically Asian parliamentary debate? We are students. Why are we doing this? It isn't as if we go to the actual parliament, these things are happening. As Vaishnavi already said, these things are not happening in our debates. So why are we even doing this? Basically, Asian parliamentary debates enhances 3 basic skills, which are very important in our jobs or in our professional career. Wherever we go, these skills are very important. First, the communication skills. You have to know the skill of how you can communicate your idea from your mind to a larger audience and make sure that the idea does not distort. You need to make sure that you know how to communicate. You might have brilliant ideas, but if you don't know how to put your idea across, then it is of no use. So you need to know how to communicate, how to persuade the other person, and how to make sure that the other person believes in your idea. The second part is critical thinking. Now, of course, you need to think about what you're saying. You need to know your arguments. If you're researching for a debate, if you're researching about a topic, let's say, you will not just open Google and say, give me all the good arguments for that. Or if you just type that out in ChatGPT, that will give you the arguments, but those arguments will not alone make sure that you win the debate. You have to understand your argument, how one argument connects with other argument. When do you have to use which argument so that you can use it in an effective manner? You need to make sure which arguments complement which other arguments. And basically, you have to use your brain. And when you use your brain and you understand how one argument, relates to another one, when you should use which argument, it enhances your analytical and critical thinking skills. You will basically, eventually, after practicing, you will realize you can craft a whole story, a whole beautiful story, a beautiful argument, and make the other person believe in it. He will believe in his entirety. There's one very famous debate, Shashi Tharoor's debate, in which he supported the idea that Britain does owe reparations to India. It's an Oxford Union debate, and I hope all of you will watch it. It's an excellent debate. It has 10 million views, I guess. In that video, you will see his whole argument is crafted in such a manner that you'll fall in love with the argument. Like it's presented in such a manner. The content is great. He has used critical thinking. He has all the data set. He has all the data, everything in his arsenal. He has good communication skills. He knows when to use humor, when to use, which kind of tool in order to get his point across. The third skill, of course, leadership skills. In Asian parliamentary debates, you are not the only person who will be speaking. You will have many other teammates. Now you have to make sure how you effectively leverage all your teammates' special qualities. Like some teammates might be good at asking questions, asking questions from the opponents. Some teammates might be good at answering certain questions. You have to assign the role according to your teammates' potentials. And you have to make sure that all your teammates, you utilize the best skill in all of your teammates and you collaborate in such a way that your team wins. You never win by yourself, your team wins. So these three things you have to make sure. Now, what are the tips for success in not only Asian parliamentary debate, but any debate for that matter? One, you should have strong rebuttals. Strong rebuttals, as in your argument should be great, as I have already said before. Clear reasoning. You should not make vague assertions or vague arguments. Strong rebuttals and clear reasoning, both of them are basically the same point. You should not make vague statements. If you're trying to communicate a strong statement, just keep that one statement in a single line. Do not try to club many statements, club many arguments. You have you have many strong arguments, right? You take one strong argument, you first present that, you first present it separately, clearly, so that people first know what that argument is. Do not have to mix things up. Now, the third thing, confidence. In my opinion, I would say confidence has helped me a lot in presenting, whether I'm presenting a session, whether I'm hosting a session, whether I'm in a debate, in an MU, and anywhere I am. Confidence is something which has helped me a lot. I will share a personal story here. Basically, I was hosting a debate session in the Diplomatia Society, and in that debate session, at the end of the session, the participants of the debate asked me about my opinion on the topic. Now, I was the one who was hosting the session, so I did not present my opinion. And truth be told, I didn't even research that much. I just knew the vague points about that particular topic of the debate. But when they asked me, when they put me on the spot, they asked me my opinion on the matter. Whatever little I knew about the topic, I presented that confidently. I presented it authoritatively. I presented it confidently, like I believed in what I said. When you do that, when you present whatever you have in a confident manner, people will believe you. You will gain people's trust. You will gain people's credibility. Like you must have heard whenever Barack Obama speaks, whether you agree with his points or not, when he speaks, you see a leader. You see that he's speaking in a confident manner. You do not feel the same way when Joe Biden is speaking, for that matter. Not to compare those two speakers, but I personally feel that Barack Obama was a much better orator. He spoke with confidence. You feel like you can trust your life with this person. It gives a sense of credibility. So confidence is a very important thing. Now, the fourth part is basically many people overlook this part because judges are the one who are scoring your points for the debate. Judges are scoring. So why should we, what are our incentives to engage the audience? Well, there are many. Let me tell you. When you engage in, if you're speaking and the audience is chattering among themselves, they are talking among themselves, they are not, it basically reflects badly upon you. It shows that you cannot hold the audience attention. You are not a good speaker. You have to engage the audience. How will you engage the audience? As you just saw, Vaishnavi spoke. I am speaking right now. How are both of us holding your attention? How are we making sure that in this online session, in this world in which 5 seconds is too long, the attention span has reduced so much that people can't even concentrate for 5 seconds? How are we making sure that you're still listening to us? We are making sure by using basically a few things which all of you can incorporate into your speaking style. We are making eye contact. I'm looking directly into the camera. We are using varied tones. We are not speaking in a monotonic manner. I'm fluctuating the pitch of my voice. I'm changing the pitch according to the argument. I'm using gestures. I'm using hand gestures. Granted that in an online meeting, engaging the audience is difficult and there are limited scopes for interaction, still we can try our best. I'm using gestures, I'm making eye contact with the camera, I'm using varied tone, and these are basically the things, tools which you can use to engage your audience. Now, basically, I would like to conclude that the critical thinking skills which is enhanced by debating, these skills you can later use when if you want to go into management, let's say. There you have to analyze a company, just like you are analyzing a policy, just like you are analyzing a topic. Just like that, you analyze a company when you go into management. When you go into law, you analyze the argument of the person, you analyze the law. When you go into science, you analyze the theories which are presented, the theorems which are there. Whichever field you go, you have to analyze, you have to think critically. So if you think that debating is something which should only be taken upon as a hobby, it does not enhance your other skill, it does not complement your other skills, my friend, you are wrong. Critical thinking is something which is very effectively taught by debating and which can be applied to all aspects of your life. Effective communication, of course, as I said, if you don't know how to communicate, no matter how good of a professor you are in college, you must have seen in Indian colleges, many professors are there who know a lot about their their field. They know all the facts, they know what all is there, but when they speak, the children aren't listening. Why is it so? It is because they don't have the requisite communication skills. They don't know how to teach. They don't know how to communicate the knowledge which they have with others. But on the same hand, if you see teachers like, physics wala, or you see teachers like, HC Verma or other teachers on YouTube, which you see, they engage, they capture your attention. How do they do that? They are good communicators. They know how to communicate their idea in such a way that you listen to them. So effective communication is also a skill which is very important. You go in job interviews, effective communication will be one of the top criteria on which they hire, no matter which field you go to. I can guarantee that. So debating enhances your critical thinking and your effective communication. On top of that, when you speak in front of an audience, for example, now I'm speaking in front of like what, 150, 200 people. When you speak in front of such a big crowd, and you're presenting yourself effectively, you're presenting yourself in such a manner, you're holding the attention. So presenting to so many people, you gain confidence that if you can speak in front of 200 people, you can capture their attention, you can present your idea without fumbling. Then you can go sit in a job interview and speak there, and still you will crack that interview. Because if you can speak in front of 200 people, of course you can speak in front of 5 HRs. Confidence building is something which can be gained by practicing the art of debating, practicing the art of oratory as a whole. You gain confidence in yourself that you have the ability. If someone puts you on the spot, you have the ability to speak continuously. I haven't prepared that much about presenting this. 1 hour preparation I must have done on this PPT. But I've been speaking continuously because I have the confidence that I can still speak on this topic and I can go on and I can make sense to the audience. I can capture their attention. This is the confidence you get from debating. Someday, of course, you people can also. Me and Vaishnavi are here right now. Rupkatha, Bhavika, we are here as panel members right now. Not too long ago, we were also, students who were listening to other panel members, other guests. We are listening to them and learning how debating is. Now we are here advising you. I would say soon, if you keep practicing this art of debating, soon you will also be in our position. You will know how to speak, know how to engage, and soon you will be the mentors. So with that, I guess we end our session today. I hope you all liked it. If there are any
I
questions, you can address them.
There are some questions. Okay, everyone, some of the questions I have answered in the chat box. Whichever I haven't answered, I will be answering them. Lavi, should you like to speak up the questions for side?
Uh, okay, so thank you, Sai, and thank you, Vaishnavi. It was great to get your insights on these topics. Actually, it was great to know how the art of debate, how the art of critical thinking translates into your professional life as well. how it helps you grow as a person and grows your mind too. Now, since the start of this sessions, I have encountered many questions in the chat box. I'll be reading out to you, Sai, and please answer them if you can. So the
Sure,
first
Nikhil.
question, the first question which I would like to read out to you is, it is an anonymous question, and it goes like that. Since debate is in a debate, there is a time limit on which debaters are debating. So, does wasting time of opponents during the debate a true strategy? And if yes, then how to do it without being called out for it?
Well, wasting time of an opponent so that as a strategy, well, it is a strategy, yes, but if you are implementing it, you have to make sure that judges don't see it as a strategy. Instead, they see as a genuine attempt at understanding or asking questions from the opposition member. Like, how can you make waste their time? You can ask them questions. You can repeatedly counter question them, so that instead of giving their statements, or instead of giving their statements or answering one question, they get another question. So all their time is used up in that, and they are not able to make present their main argument. So you can do that, but you have to make sure, if you overuse it, it will reflect badly upon you, because then the judges and the audience will understand that you're using it deliberately. Your intent is not to ask the question, but to waste time. And this will reflect very badly on you. They will think that you're debating in bad spirit, and don't overuse it. That's all I would say.
That was a great strategy to use. And moving forward, we have a question from Vignaya Bhatt, and he is asking that, is it better to remain factual throughout a debate or to exchange a few hypothetical circumstances as well?
Well, that actually depends on the topic of debate. For example, if the topic of debate is climate change, let's say, then based on the data, that the datas and theories that the scientists have propagated, the scientists have presented, we can make certain suitable hypotheses. Yes, we can. But if the topic is something which is very grounded, like should Hindi be the language of official language of India, some very practical topic in which there is no need of hypotheses. And when you are making hypotheses in those topics, in those arguments for those topics, then it is not a very good thing, because you are deviating from the facts and using hypotheses. So I would say it depends on the topics. If you are if there is a topic in which hypotheses are suitable, like climate change, or let's say some topic related to extraterrestrial civilization, if extraterrestrial civilization exists or not, in these topics you can use relevant hypotheses. But if the topic is grounded, something which is very much in the real world, something on which there is data, then I would say you shouldn't use hypothesis. If you use it in such a manner that you use facts. You should not deviate from the facts.
So the logical based hypothesis is the key if to this answer. Moving forward, Sai, we have question from Harshvardhan Auti, and what he is trying to ask is that emotional and logical appeals both are important in a debate. How to figure out the balance based on the topic of the emotional
Well,
appeal as well as the logical appeal?
well, again, as I said, emotional and logical arguments, both of them are very important. Like you see, when a person uses logical argument, that is basically how he's presenting the data about the current scenario. But when the person is talking about the future, the kind of impact that particular data, that particular argument, the particular policy has on future, then he's using an emotional argument. So I would say use it in balance, but there are certain cases in which data would be much more preferred, because data, data can never drag you down. Of course, if you present it like a monologue, then of course it will not be very good. You have to present data in a good manner, in a presentable manner, but you have to use emotion, correct mixture of emotion and data. If you're using emotion, you have to make sure that it is grounded in data. Like you can take the data, make the base of the foundation of the argument using data, the strong foundation part which I talked about before, and then start weaving a story using emotional arguments which are suitable to the data, so that no one can say that you're deviating from the data, because you are making relevant arguments, emotional ones, although which are impacting in an emotional way. So yes, you can ground your argument on data and then use emotional arguments to improve that argument to connect with the audience, because no matter how many data points you might cite, connection with audience is something which you can only gain. Connection with judges is something which you can only gain with you know emotional arguments. So don't make emotional arguments your primary argument, make data your primary argument, and then fine tune it, you know s- supplement it with emotional arguments.
I think that very much clears the question and the doubt which he had. Now, this is the last question, and I think it is a very essential question for everyone who is attending this boot camp. So the question is from Jay, and he is asking, how can I improve my communication in English? And my major problem is when I speak English, sometimes I stammer. How can I overcome this problem?
Well, this is one question which many people have asked me. So I think I'm suited enough to answer this. Basically, I would like to share a story here. Um, I used to read a lot of books, so my written English was very good, but basically my spoken English was not that good. So I basically came from Delhi, and in Delhi, in class 11th, I went to a debate to St. Columba School. For those of you who might not know about the school, it's a very reputed school there. In St. Columba School, I encountered an opponent which I will never forget in my life. I had the arguments. We had to prepare the arguments on spot. So I had the arguments in front of me, but I did not have the script in front of me. So I had to speak from the arguments which I have written. And that opponent, who I will remember for the rest of my life, she annihilated me. She destroyed me in that debate, and she was the winner of that debate. It was 3 round debate because she had that exposure. She used to communicate frequently in English with her parents, with everyone else. So to improve your vocabulary, to improve how you write, first you should make your foundation with reading books, reading articles, to make sure that your vocabulary is wide. But to improve your spoken English skills. Now, what I did after she blasted me, she completely ruined my argument, and I lost that competition very badly. I was very much angry. I was angry on myself that I knew the arguments, I could have done it. Then why did I not do it? So I directed that anger in a positive way. For the next 2 months, in school, in at home, everywhere, I talked only in English with everyone, no matter how basic the statement might be. No matter if I even had to ask for water, most basic shit. I did that. I spoke all of it in English only. And slowly it became a habit. And after 2 months, my English teacher asked me to, explain a topic, NCRT chapter in class. While I was explaining the topic, it was about a 40 minutes class. And after I finished explaining the topic, I didn't realize that I've been communicating, I've been speaking English non-stop, without stammering, without, uttering a single wrong word for whole 40 minutes. And just like in this session, I haven't prepared a script for this session. I'm speaking it right now. I'm just looking at the points in the slides. I'm recounting my experiences, and I'm sharing it with you. How am I able to do that? Because from that 2 month, you know, that 2 month fiasco in which I trained myself in spoken English, and still daily I use English. I talk with some of my South Indian friends who do not know Hindi in English. I talk with my faculties in English. I talk with my friends, even if they know my mother tongue Hindi, I still talk with them in English if it's a formal setting. So first improve your vocabulary by reading books, articles, whatever you can in which the use of word is good. Improve the vocabulary first. Get your grammar right, your vocabulary right. After you do that, then you move on to spoken English practice. Without speaking, without practicing, you cannot achieve fluency in English or in any language for that matter. I know German, but I cannot speak it fluently because I'm not used to speaking it. I've never spoken it in front of anyone. So, be fluent in a language, you have to speak it. And if you speak it consistently, eventually you will start hosting sessions. At first, you will stammer. At first, you will make some mistakes. forget those mistakes. You might think that people think too much about your mistakes. They don't. Make mistakes, improve them, and then slowly you will not even realize that you have changed so much that you are communicating in English throughout, and you have not uttered a single wrong word, and now you can structure an idea in a good manner. So that is all I would say. First, maintain your vocabulary, grammar, then use that, put it into practice, and at least practice for 1, 2, 3 months only in English. Then keep it, make it a habit to speak some time in with some people in English who are comfortable with the language to converse in English. That's all I would say.
Thank you, Sai. That was some great insights on how to improve the speaking skills in English. Just to add to that point, I would like to also add that when you are starting to speak in English, na, don't be too much worried about your diction. People are too much worried about how they pronunciate words and how they speak it. Just go out and say it. Slowly you will build that diction of which you are a fan of. And on that note, I would like to conclude the day one of our bootcamp. It has been a great session for everyone. And as you can say, I started this session by reading out from a script, and now I am ending it without reading one. So this shows how this session has been helpful to every one of us. And I would utterly thank all the panelists, Sai, the IIT Madras Diplomacia Club, for allowing us to host this session for our fellow students. It has added values to us. Thanks a lot.